Hello, everyone. Welcome to What in the Westworld Just Happened. I'm Ian DeBorja. That by my side is Kevin McFarlane, and welcome to the IMDb Twitch streams. Let us jump right into what we learned.
Cool.
All right, so last night was a big one. So this is episode 4, The Riddle of the Sphinx. It was an hour 14 minutes long, so a real doozy.
Yeah, like a supersized episode. I don't think we were we weren't expecting one, but we've known that we're getting a couple of those throughout the season.
Yeah, they've said that a handful of times. So let's see. First thing, I think that the biggest reveal is that Elsie is alive.
Well, yeah, maybe. Well, one of the two big reveals.
Okay. Debatable. Okay, so what do you think is? Which one do you think is?
I think the biggest reveal is the one that we kind of knew, is that Emily, or whatever, what name was she going by in the park? Grace?
Grace.
Yeah, so that Grace is Emily, William's daughter.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of speculation whether she was on a different timeline and was a young version of another character, or whether she was William's daughter. And, it pays off, and it's William's daughter. And I think just the confirmation of that and what that means for the Man in Black storyline was the biggest reveal to me. But it was nice. I mean, I think we also kind of knew Elsie was still alive as well.
Yeah.
We hadn't seen her yet in the more current timelines, but she was still participating in all of the cast Q&As. So we sort of figured she would show up at some point.
Right. So let's start with Grace then, / Emily, I suppose. A couple things interesting about her. So she speaks, I think Lakota is the name of the language that they call for the Ghost Nation.
Yeah.
And something that's interesting is in the scene where she's speaking to them after being captured, what's his name? One of the security guards, he actually says, "You spent so much time here that you learned their language," which is interesting because that's the first time we've seen basically her and Man in Black are the only two times we've seen the business interact with them, other than being not interacting with them as a guest at the park, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So Man in Black, they say, he can do whatever he wants. He's different. And then here we have him interacting. So,
but not really a recognition from him that she is
the daughter.
Right. William's daughter. Do we know their family name? What's William? Because he marries into the Delos family, but I don't think we know William's.
No, I don't think
name.
I don't think his last name is in Black.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so that's one thing. And then we see her. She's not even in it that much, right? So we kind of see two different angles of her being caught by Ghost Nation, and then we see her again at the end. Yeah,
it's sort of as she's in the episode insofar as she intersects with William's plot line. Right. I feel like you can divide the episode in half with sort of a couple things sprinkling off it. It's a Bernard and a William episode, and Bernard has his flashbacks, and William has his flashbacks to his younger self with James, and then also the sort of sideways tangential plot line of what's going on with Emily, Grace.
Right.
So yeah, I think that it's a very, for being a supersized episode, it is relatively contained in terms of who the episode is centering on. It's basically just Bernard and William and who they come in contact with throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's another example of the Westworld showrunners' very good self-control of not feeling the need to squeeze in all these people into every episode, which kind of gives it a pretty strong impact there.
Yeah, I think it also made me think that an episode with no Dolores really made me kind of realize that unless Dolores has an adversary to go up against, I'm not as interested in what she is doing. When she comes into contact with Maeve and there's some conflict there over what should the hosts be doing or how they should go about liberating themselves, then it's really interesting. But when she's just sort of making cryptic pronouncements, it's a little bit much sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with that too. You know, and hopefully we'll see the next episode how that changes at all.
Yeah.
All right, so Elsie then. The Elsie reveal I think is very interesting. So we last see Elsie in season 1, halfway through it, maybe a little over halfway through it.
Yeah, maybe episode 5 or 6, where she's investigating a creepy house, and we find out later that Bernard, under Robert's
control,
under Robert's control, has gone to subdue her and chain her up with some protein bars, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, protein bars. Yeah. So we find him. So we see Bernard being led by Clementine to a cave, which again, another biblical reference. Like I don't remember this many biblical references in season 1 at all. I mean,
yeah, but there's a lot of biblical imagery and storytelling, like things that resonate with biblical stories.
Like people getting remade coming out of a cave, like obviously Lazarus, and they kind of I think they allude to that maybe in the beginning. Yeah. Obviously, tons of Last Supper imagery and crucifixion imagery and that sort of stuff, and obviously God versus devil stuff is pretty interesting. But yeah, so Elsie is found in a cave, and Bernard is led to her. He kind of has like one of those freakouts, and she saves him via once he quickly figures out I need to prove to her that I was under someone else's control. She takes the tablet and figures it out, and then they move forward from there. So what did you think about all those reactions?
I was surprised at how quickly Elsie processed the reveal.
Yeah.
Given how shocked, I mean, I guess like in the first season, the reveal is paired with, and she's going to get murdered by Bernard under Robert's control. So like Elsie, Bernard is doing it in displaying in such a way that shows how helpless he is and that he needs help, that he needs her care. And she also is thinking of it from the perspective of somebody who worked alongside Bernard to like give these hosts backstories. So she's able to process like the layers of information she believes he has as a human, and then think of him as a host and a character.
Right.
And what she will have to learn then in interacting with Bernard is how he transcends the typical host guest creator interaction in the ways that Maeve and Dolores have as well in with other humans throughout the park.
Yeah, something about Elsie, and I'm not sure. It's just because it could be because I think Bernard Jeffrey Wright is such a strong actor. Like that line delivery or Elsie's writing to me, I did not really click with, and I know I'm on the minority here for a lot of folks. On Reddit, a lot of people really praised this episode as maybe being like someone saying like some of the best episodes. I actually think it's probably my least favorite episode of the season.
Really?
Yes.
That's so interesting.
So we get to switch roles.
Yeah, because I think this is my favorite episode of the season.
So there were a lot of really, really strong moments, but I think my main issue was that Elsie. I never had a real fandom for her to come back in season. Like I was curious what happened to her, but there was never a time where I was like, I need like Elsie's return.
She needs to prove why she's still alive, or the writers need to prove why she's still alive.
Yeah,
I think that is definitely out there.
So I never I was like, okay, cool, she's back. Like there she is. My main thing is that she, her dialogue was so, it was so on the nose. Like a lot of the times, if that makes sense. So I feel like when Bernard's showing her things, she would say like, wait a minute, they were building other things here. And I get part of it is because she is experiencing all this like for the first time, right? Which is true. But
she is the audience surrogate, right? Like right, she is literally the audience surrogate.
Yeah, and I just like that. I feel like for a show that obviously prides itself on being very nuanced and like really makes the audience think of what they're seeing, she takes a lot of her dialogue. Actually, I felt to me was so like very on the nose and like kind of hand holding, which I'm not used to when watching Westworld, if that makes sense.
Sure. I think that when she was working alongside Bernard in the first season before her character, I think, is so tied to a well-run, workman-like scenario or status quo at the park. Yep. That there's so much that she needs to get caught up on that it's a jolt to throw a character who hasn't been a part of all of the twists that have gone on.
Sure.
Just sort of pop up again and have to like work through and get acclimated to all of the changes. Like the one thing that doesn't happen in this episode with them is that she doesn't really interact with any other hosts in the park. There is the scene with James that we'll get to, but she hasn't seen what the park is like now, or interacted with like familiar hosts or people she's worked with or worked on.
Yeah, it's just that very quick interaction of, like you said, Bernard's like, well, the hopes are free, and she's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, like, all right.
So
she doesn't really. I don't know that she's really comprehended exactly what the new landscape of the park is. So there's going to be like, if that was rubbing you the wrong way this episode, there's going to be more of it because she has to have a wait, what's going on kind of thing when they interact with more hosts further on. But yeah, I mean, like I can understand that. I just like I think that I'm putting a little bit of faith in Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy that they've kept her alive and are bringing her back for some reason to complicate and pay off the boss employee relationship that's going on with Bernard and Elsie.
Yeah, a good theory I read about that was that Elsie's going to, Bernard was programmed, or Clementine was programmed to go bring Bernard to find Elsie because maybe Ford trusts Elsie more than other people or something like that. I know it kind of seems like when Bernard says, Ford thought you knew too much. I don't know if that's a thing, but about how Ford wanted Elsie to basically be his healer for the rest of his like journey forward. So, Ford could have seen all of this happening. He knew all this was going to happen ahead of time. So he has Bernard basically, knock her out and put her somewhere safe until he can go get her. And, like, carry her around as a healer. I'm not sure about that, but it sort of seems.
Right? It seems like that when he phrases it like Ford thought you knew too much, or that instead of taking her out, like she knew too much and was going to threaten things the way that they take out the other executive in the later episodes in that first season, that she knows too much, but she's valuable and they need her down the line, so she gets subdued and hidden away and then brought back. So there is some purpose there of why she's treated differently that we still need to see.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. And then the other basically big storyline, or at least the one that I wrote down, obviously, is the William Man in Black, Jim Delos storyline. Do you want to give a quick summary of?
Sure. So I mean, I guess to start, it ties into the episode title, the Riddle of the Sphinx, right?
Oh yeah, I looked up what that riddle is specifically.
Yeah, so it's about man, right? It's what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening is something that it's supposed to be.
Yes, and yes.
Yeah, and the answer is man for life cycle, that you crawl, then you walk, then you use a cane. That's sort of, so we get the 3 phases of those interactions, supposedly mirroring this riddle. And what you slowly begin to realize, or I guess not really that slowly, you kind of assume from the get-go and from the teaser at the beginning of James coughing as he's turning his company over to William.
Yes, the cough of death.
Yeah, that what's going on here is that William is trying to perform some kind of Turing test, basically, on a James artificial being, or some pseudo being, where they're trying to implant some human consciousness into an artificial life form, I guess, and try and figure out how to create humans that work and extend life. And so initially William goes there, and James works through a conversation and is in a room by himself and fails the test at some point.
Yep.
And then William leaves, and then we see William come back, and you can see in close-ups that his hair is graying a little bit.
Right.
Maybe his hairline has receded a little bit. His eyes are a little more sunken.
Yeah. The aging was very, very good.
Yeah,
really well
it was
done.
nicely subtle. And then he makes it kind of to the same point, I want to say, in the conversation.
Right about the same point, yeah.
Yeah, right about the same point in the conversation. Maybe there's something going on where he's lasted longer as a being, but at the same point in the conversation he malfunctions. And then your third complication of that cycle is Ed Harris comes in instead of you have your older William, and his interactions. He at that point is very much, I don't give an F of what's going on in this world. He's tired of all of the iterations. The progress hasn't gone as planned, and he thinks that perhaps not only was this experiment a waste of time, but the entire investment in Westworld and artificial beings were a waste of time for the entirety of his business career. And he, what you in the sort of later reveals is he isn't going in, and James isn't malfunctioning because there's some flaw in his design. It's not a natural decay, but William has provoked him into malfunctioning by throwing out that his wife, James's daughter, committed suicide. That Logan died of an overdose years ago.
So he was saying things to make him upset.
Exactly. And the whole reasoning being that there's something in the cognitive function, and it sort of echoes what happens with Bernard earlier, that there's like a cognitive advancement block somehow, that they can only progress so far as humanoid things.
Yep.
And then their brain function can't be as complex as human brain development, I guess. That's what I was reading from.
Right. Yeah, and in chat, Hate Your Heroes says he thinks that the 149th try was a success, and he agrees that William had a kill switch phrase, which you seem to imply was him bringing up the deaths of loved ones.
Yeah.
And use it on the host to end it.
Or maybe not even that, like a kill switch phrase. It might even be more complicated than that. That it's not just like, here's a phrase and it's going to like break you down, but here are emotional topics which that artificial brain can't process. Like, which is even to me an even more interesting topic to present. It's that it's all working until you present somebody with an onslaught of impossible to process emotional information, and then as opposed to a human just like breaking down and crying and being emotionally bereft, the artificial being can't function anymore.
So do we think, and this could just be because Jim Delos is obviously modeled after real Jim Delos, so Delos host, he hears these emotional things and doesn't freak out. Abernathy seems to have something similar to that happen, right?
Yeah.
So do we think there is some sort of relation there? Maybe Abernathy is maybe modeled after someone too, potentially? He was a test that made it into the park?
Maybe. I wonder whether it was just that he's sort of a proof of concept, that like these beings are capable of higher emotional function, but they degrade at a certain point, and that's what's going on with Delos.
Because what's interesting is obviously Bernard is starting to degrade like that, but Maeve and the other hosts don't seem to have any sort of. And Maeve, of all the hosts, have had the most amount of like emotional realizations come and
trauma inflicted upon
her, and remembrances of that trauma, and she has not had that happen yet. So I'm curious if, to me, Men in Black did look younger in that final flashback.
Yeah, it's supposed to. I think it's like a year. It's like it seems like right after she dies, and then in his grief, because he's got that that beard going on.
And they do those very interesting flashbacks of they're alluding to someone she had killed herself in the bathtub, right? That's kind of what
and you see those sort of sequences as he's sitting, William sitting there in the rain in the bar. Where he's being confronted by the Confederados and that sort of thing. Right. He's imagining and sort of then shifting into personifying himself as death. But what it seems like he does the James scene maybe in the immediate aftermath or right before he goes into the park, his sort of long journey, because when he leaves James distraught and destroying his enclosure, I guess, he tells the sort of attendant to just leave him to observe the degradation process. And then later, when Elsie and Bernard happen upon this secret enclosure there in that section of the park, they find James.
Yep.
And they find that the attendant has been killed, and James is malfunctioning, and it's kind of unclear exactly how much time has passed for James down there, and what his goal is.
The human host, or the human like engineer scientist didn't seem to like, the body looked relatively fresh.
Yeah. That's true. That's fair. So it's not like decomposition for the human hasn't really taken place that much.
And they do show quickly on like, they show a screen. It does say 149th build. So he was around. It could have been, there wasn't. I don't know. I don't know if that shows how much time has changed, but it is interesting.
Yeah, I sort of the thing. I guess the other thing that we can talk about there that's sort of confirmed, and the connection that is made, is that Delos and Westworld are trying to extend human life, and it seems like they are successful up to a point. Mm-hmm. And what William is dissatisfied and sort of ethically drawing a line at is that there might not be a way to do it perfectly. So why do it at all?
Right. Because it does seem like, and something that I think really my favorite part about this episode is that it was the first time we got to see William and Man in Black really see consequence, or see any sort of regret, particularly Man in Black, obviously. But now, like, evil William, I guess. I mean, I don't know how evil he is actually right now after this episode, but William, he looks like defeated, right? I mean, obviously his wife had just died. His daughter apparently blames him for whatever had happened there. And when he sees his family again, like, he just looks like whether he can't do it again, or he really wanted to do it for the sake of his wife, and now his wife said he just can't take it anymore. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it seems like he took over, like, he had this idea when he went to Westworld that, like, the possibilities of what could be done with this level of artificial intelligence were boundless, and you could extend life for an infinite amount of years. And his frustration at being unable to hit that breakthrough could be one of the reasons why he's so sort of callous and cold in his business life, where he's succeeding all over the place, but this one failure eludes him, or he can't make this one big thing work. And if he can't satisfy to make a satisfying facsimile, it is causing his wife problems, putting undue stress on his family, that this one failure in his business life he sees as infecting every area of the rest of his life, no matter how successful he's been. It's sort of the poisonous root, right. And thus he kind of wants to just chuck it away. But he's still lingering. He still wants to play Robert's game. He still wants to get to the center of this maze, or find the door, or whatever he's doing. Which I guess leads us to the sort of the older William in like the present timeline of what he does with what's Clifton Collins' name? I always forget his name. But they go back to where his family is, or his family, or whatever, and you sort of find out that his character is similar to William, that he has a wife and daughter, but is separated from them very often, and says, I think he literally at one point says that the best I could do, or the best
to be away from them.
Be away from them, exactly, which has some nice resonance with William. But the Confederados are there and are looking to collect weapons and men and go off to, I guess, presumably find where Dolores is going and fight her. Yep. And William is having none of that.
No.
And
Lawrence,
there we go. Yeah. So Lawrence kind of seems to betray Lawrence, but is kind of playing a longer game with all of that, and sort of single-handedly takes out the Confederados, which apparently in the first scene ever in Westworld that has rain.
Oh, I didn't notice that. I noticed the rain, but I didn't
read it online. We've never seen rain before in Westworld.
That's interesting.
Which is an interesting touch there, which also has its own biblical connotations of cleansing and rebirth and that sort of thing, where William helps Lawrence defeat the Confederados, and then Lawrence's daughter is there as a Robert surrogate again, telling him, "Hey, you're looking in the wrong direction." Which is an interesting which is a little bit of an interesting guide, I guess, to tell him he needs to look backwards. Well,
they keep saying like you have to go to where it all began. Like they've made that reference a couple times. So I don't know. Maybe it was like I read some funny things online where it's like Ford's just telling him to leave the park.
Or maybe people have been saying like maybe it's the door he enters the park, or maybe it really is just like, dude, leave, go home. Go home,
right. Yeah. Interesting. So someone in chat, just before let's go back to young William. Do you think William chose his father to lead his experiment because he wanted him to suffer? Or am I putting emotions in the wrong words in that situation? So I don't know if he wanted him to suffer, but maybe I think he could have been doing it for his wife, right? Like the father-in-law, Jim Delos, seemed to favor William much more than Logan.
Yeah, there's a real question of how much feeling those builds have.
Right.
And that also ties in with Bernard's storyline, where Bernard is having these memories of himself creating a control unit, which is, I guess, the sort of red sphere that we're presuming is like within the brain.
Yep.
Like, I don't know, unit of one of these hosts.
Yep.
It's like it is, I guess, the brain control that they've got. And then trashing the lab and making sure nobody is left alive from anywhere in there. So we don't really know these human host hybrids, what exactly of them is preserved, how that process is done, whether they feel, whether it's just a lot of data collection done from the human, and they're trying to make it mimic as best as possible the hosts, or they're not completely. It seems like they haven't been able to make them completely conscious, but that sort of runs contrary to what we're learning about Dolores and Maeve and Bernard. That with Maeve, I kind of feel like what the technicians did in sort of adjusting her settings is one of the things that's helping her not just like cognitively wig out like crazy. But that doesn't really explain why everybody else isn't having those same problems, or why Bernard particularly seems so affected and like he has that cognitive block and has to get rebooted by Elsie. But yeah, I don't know. We would need to know more about how the emotion transfer worked, or how much pain they can feel, or how much human, how much artificial they are. What is it, a Bicentennial Man situation? Like I don't really know what to say about that unless we knew more of the composition.
Right. All right. So then, old William. A couple things in that scene too. So, like I said earlier, it was the first time we got to see old William looks like he felt remorse, or he felt concerned about the situation. And it didn't seem like it was even about himself, but it was about the people, the hosts around him, where he realized things actually could go like very badly. Maybe all of a sudden it's because he had a relationship with Lawrence. He made a quick connection with Lawrence right before that all happened. But there is a really interesting image of in season 1, episode 2, where I think Man in Black at the time first meets Lawrence. He actually dances with his wife.
Oh, that's right.
Spin around. And in this episode, what's his name? I can't remember his name though.
The Confederado, or
Craddock.
Maybe. Craddock? Yeah, I just end up calling him the Confederado. I know him more from Justified than I do from this show, so I'm like,
so,
I was thinking.
So the Confederado, he spins his wife around too, which I thought was interesting. I think it makes me excited because I'm glad they're able to take a character who was so like, I don't care about anything, to like where he is now in a pretty quick amount of time too, and it's like been very believable, and I really mastercraft in writing and character development. I think
one of the things that bears noticing, this is the first episode directed by Lisa Joy, the co-creator of the series, and it's phenomenal. Like it looks great. It's paced really well. The performances are all really, really good. I mean, LC debate notwithstanding. But there was a lot of sort of online fervor about this being Lisa Joy's first episode and that she should direct more episodes. I don't know how many John Nolan has directed. I feel like he just did the pilot and the finale for last year.
I'm not sure. Let me try and take a look at that.
Yeah.
But yes, it was really good. For me, being a big Lost fan, I think you like Lost, right? You're a Lost guy.
I'm one of those people who didn't watch Lost until like I binged everything and then watched only the final like 5 or 6 episodes live. I caught up during the last season, and that made me. I loved Lost because all I did was spend 4 months watching Lost. I spent years invested in that mystery.
Yeah,
which I think it's much better for me. I think because I didn't feel cheated by anything that happened in the final season.
I love Lost. I have watched Lost 3 times through. Yeah, all
the
way. Yes, I'm a big fan of Lost. I can overlook the very questionable storytelling, but something that stood out to me is the opening scene and just a lot of the Jim Delos scenes, like very paralleled. Season 2, episode 1 of Lost. If you haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil it because I recommend everyone who's watched Lost.
It's an Australian guy, right? What's his name?
So it's with it's where we meet Desmond for the first time.
There we go. Yeah, that's his name.
There's a record playing and the guy's on the cycle, and I thought that was a nice little touch there. But Lisa Joy, who did an AMA on the subreddit today, I think is it in that or another article where she talked about some 2001 references too, right?
Yeah, she's done a couple things. She did that AMA, but she also has done some interviews with like Entertainment Weekly or a couple basically to address the similarities between that and Lost, and basically they were kind of entirely unintentional. It seems like they were basically just both referencing the same things instead of one influencing the other.
Right. And I like that she also mentions 2001 A Space Odyssey vibe. So she says the apartment, she was going for a 2001 Space Odyssey vibe, this mysterious, futuristic environment that you feel somewhat displaced in. I thought that was cool because it did look like that, right? It was very interesting.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, anytime you're trying to reference like the final 15 or 20 minutes of 2001, it's an interesting idea and an interesting sort of thematic presence. I mean, that is, I don't know, that movie is a lot about the nature of existence and human survival and that sort of thing. So it thematically resonates well.
Totally. And someone in chat also brought up, so old William last season was dying and didn't have much time left, but that hasn't been mentioned this season.
That is an interesting.
There were a lot of parallels to his condition that were mirrored with his father-in-law.
Yeah, he was like coughing and drinking a lot.
Blood. Yes, he's coughing in the blood a lot. That's a good catch, Space Radio. I'm curious if that's going to get brought up again because I actually had not thought about that until that comment right there. And that seems to be a kind of big oversight because I remember him coughing in the blood.
I wonder if now that he's reunited with his daughter, like we're going to find out a lot drawing, presumably not next week, but in 2 weeks or so. What Emily is in the park for, what her map drawing is all about.
Yep.
Whether she wants to help her father or hinder her father on his progress, or how close to death he is. Is this a reconciliation moment, or is this spiteful family, which seems to have happened a lot with the Delos clan?
Let's jump to the theories then. We can get talking about that. Okay, so do you have any listed out here? We didn't get to prep ahead of time as much as usual.
Sure. I mean, the thing that I really think about is who was the control unit meant for. That's the theory that I really liked was that could be Arnold. That when Bernard wakes up on the beach in the sort of 2 weeks later scene, it's that he has been rebuilt as Arnold, similar to James, a pseudo-human, artificial.
And is that why we see him having the shakes all of a sudden?
Yeah, that maybe he's experiencing these things and is very confused, not because he's Bernard experiencing things again or doing that, but because he's actually a hybrid version of Arnold, and he sees all the hosts and they're dead, and his thought is, oh, I killed them, I caused this massacre, and when I died,
right.
and now I see them all dead again.
And and he has a standout line of "Is this now?" I really like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that is a really interesting.
Yeah,
where Bernard is having a hard time differentiating between his memories of being in a place and his current timeline in a place.
That was also very impressive filmmaking on their part. The way they showed his confusion of time very, very well.
Yeah.
They would have Elsie disappear and reappear in the frame. They would show him watching things happen at the same time. It was really well done. And that leads me into we talked about this maybe last week or 2 weeks ago. I still don't think we're very aware of how many timelines we're actually seeing.
Yeah, people have been trying to keep them together. You can see them trying to lay it out, and I'm still not sure we've got.
Yeah, like there's a pretty good post on the subreddit of like someone lays out every week of where things are happening, and they think that all this Bernard stuff is happening 2 weeks prior to when he is found on the beach. I don't know. I'm not sure where all these things are. I'm like with him specifically. Obviously, we see Clementine kind of in her weird like robotic phase, like bringing him over there. But I think what happens inside is very confusing. Because he's where he's singing Elsie when he's actually with Elsie, and when he's not, like when Elsie's actually breaking through the door, he's saying like, "Don't do this." So does that mean he goes back there a third time? And when he's back there, he sees it happening again, right? So one time he was there and saw it happen.
Yeah.
And then in the future, he ends up going back there again and has the same flashback where we're only seeing it in this time. Like I think we're seeing him seeing things in the forward, in like him experiencing things in the past and the future as well. I don't know. It's. I think none of us are on to exactly what
it's tough to keep straight. It's still a little jumbled for me. I'm not exactly sure where everything is fitting.
Yeah. What other theories you got? Any other interesting ones that you think stand out?
The stuff, I guess this really more ties into like stuff that I'm really curious about. Like I want to know more. We've gotten so much about the Delos family. Like, I don't want this to be the last we hear of Logan. Like, we sort of presumed when we saw Logan interacting with Dolores at that party to sort of hand over control of the company. Like, I want to know what happened with Logan between there and his overdose, and like, is there anything more that we need to know about his relationship with William, or Logan's relationship with his sister, or anything like that, that would tell us more information about sort of that family constellation. I sort of presume there might be some of that with Emily joining the picture, that there's going to be some more family connection and more references to that. But that's information that I am really curious about as to what happened to Logan, where Logan stood.
He's a pretty big character to just have like, he OD'd.
He died on the way back to his home planet.
I agree. That I would really like to see where that's happening.
Was there any other theory that was sticking out to you as something that was really...
I don't think so. I'm mostly pretty pumped about next week's episode.
Yeah, so we finally do really get into Shogun World, like that and what that means, and whether that trailer or that teaser is a really interesting glimpse into what goes on there.
There's not there wasn't like too much like story wise. Like it looks like and I feel like they're gonna stretch all that out over the course of maybe two Maeve episodes.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting one. The design of everything looks very, very cool. And also something that I thought was interesting in that too is Dolores is not in that trailer either. If I remember correctly.
Wait, what?
Is Dolores in that trailer for the next episode?
I don't think so. But my impression of that was that like when that character is speaking the lines in the beginning of it, like that seemed like she is the Shogun World Dolores to me, is what I got the sense of, that she was, and that Maeve was sort of interrupting this, and that what Maeve is walking into, I guess my impression was that there are not like the same stories going on in every park, but there are people who fill similar roles in every park, and it sort of seemed like Maeve, being more cognizant of what is going on, would be more able to exploit that situation and then basically get an army for herself was what it seemed like what she wanted to do going into Shogun World.
Interesting.
Get an army and then go back to Westworld with an army backing her.
Okay, I'm just gonna pull up the trailer.
Sure, by all
this will
means,
be easiest. Let's see. Okay. Wait, is this right? Oh no, that was from earlier today. There it is. Okay, let's see. Interesting. I did not think of it like that at all.
Yeah,
and I think you were 100% correct.
I don't know whether but that really does seem like something that Dolores would say.
Yes, 100%.
And to have Maeve like repeat the line with her.
Yes. Oh, so Dolores is there for a little bit there.
Yeah. Okay.
Something that's interesting, man. The design of all the costumes and the way it looks like they shot looks amazing.
Yeah. I'm really intrigued to see how the Western characters, because like Maeve adopts the clothing of Shogun World, but her compatriots don't seem to be doing the same thing.
No.
So I don't know if they're getting separated or if the worlds are just going to clash, or bringing a gun into Shogun World. What's going on there? What are we going to do with this?
Right. And we also didn't see our favorite. What's his name? The writer. Man, I keep playing.
Oh yeah, we don't see Lee Sizemore, do we? We get shots of
Hector.
Yeah, Hector and the blonde lady with all the tattoos.
Armistice.
There we go, Armistice.
Yep.
They're there, but we don't get any Lee Sizemore, so I wonder whether Lee Sizemore is going to get some wisecracks. Because he was so freaked out by it.
Yeah.
I wonder what they're gonna see. It would be sort of interesting if the theories were right and there are difficulty levels, and what do difficulty levels mean in these parks, and what does that mean for her manipulating presumably hosts that she was able to do in Westworld. Maybe she can't do it as easily in Shogun World, and that's why she's there for longer.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm curious if she has like the same like superpower control over them. It seems like maybe not, because she's actually having to fight, it looks like, for the first time. But again, these guys, they cut these trailers so sneakily. They know we're just trying to dig around at what's happening anyway. But
they do give us more like plot ideas. I always think of the ones that you never had any idea were Mad Men on the next episode, where Mad Men was just like a bunch of shots of people walking through an office and no lines and no nothing. So we have at least some semblance
of where we're going.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so overall, on a scale of IMDb scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate this episode?
I'm going 9. I think it's my favorite episode of the season, and I think it's my favorite episode of the show since the Bernard reveal.
The what door episode?
Yeah, the Bernard reveal was my favorite. I would go like that Bernard reveal, then the finale of season 1, and then this episode.
Really,
I think are my top 3 of the series.
And I think you're definitely in the majority. If you read online, a lot of people are saying basically the same things. I honestly, I'd put this at maybe like a 7. 6,
really?
7?
So
yeah,
do you think that's because there's not a lot of like the rest of the characters in it? Do you think the economy of the characters?
No. That's fine with me. Because I hate pinpointing it to one thing, but it's really Elsie just like bothered me so much. Again, for a show that is so nuanced and so dedicated to being subtle with hints, all of a sudden her writing was just so like on the nose.
Yeah.
And to me that just like bothered me. Especially I don't know. I think I might have to rewatch it, because it could have been I was like, it is so freaking hot up here in Seattle right now. I was like sweating watching it with like a fan on my face. So
what in the world? You got a heat wave up in Seattle? Oh,
well, it's like 80 degrees, but 70 degrees. But then in my house is old, so it's just like all the heat. It's just like
sure.
But anyway, yeah. So I think I am gonna rewatch it, because I typically go to Reddit and am agreeance with most of what the internet and what you say. and I am on the opposite side of almost everything.
Hey, that's a good thing. That means that you're still thinking independently.
That's true. Yes, I'm sentient, and everyone else are hosts.
Yes, we're all hosts being programmed by Ford.
Demand. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh man.
Cool. Any last words here?
I think that I am glad that we're getting these sort of split up episodes where we're not like touching base with everybody in every episode, but I am like, it makes the cliffhangers that much more painful that we see these things and then we know we're not going to find out what's going on for 2 weeks. So I'm starting to get a little concerned that cliffhangers are used there just to tease us and make us frustrated. And I kind of want there to be at least some level of closure on the things brought up within an episode if we're not going to revisit them in the next week. That's sort of my concern with piecing out the story in that fashion. But we're halfway point is next week.
Yes.
So
and it doesn't look like we have a break. So I'm looking at the episodes now. We have May 20th, May 27th, June 3rd. So we do not have a break.
Yeah, all right. So we're going straight through.
We're going straight through, and I know some people don't like looking at titles, so I won't read them online. But if you look at the episode titles, you can, again, I'm just assuming you can kind of tell where things are going.
Yeah.
But again, I can't put too much stock into that, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Anyway, last comment by Space Radio. The thing I love about this show is that it puts the entire plot in plain sight but edits it really well. If you pay enough attention, you're pretty much never surprised. Exactly. Yeah. Like, again, I think which is why, again, I give the Elsie's character a break, because there are more people probably than not are not hounding the internet for every little detail and every little thing. So it's good to have a character like that kind of like tie it all up in a bow.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I will say that I am looking forward. Next week's director is Craig Zobel, who not only is he one of the co-founders of Homestar Runner.
Oh, really?
But he's directed episodes of The Leftovers, and he adapted Z for Zachariah, that novel.
Yeah, I'm looking at
it.
And
Compliance. Yeah, he's done a lot of really interesting work. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, he did an episode of American Gods too. Nice. Okay. The Homestar Runner, that is something I had.
Yeah, what a weird connection, right?
Very weird connection, but hey, good for him. Awesome, cool. Well, Kevin, where can people find you online? How can they keep track of all your words of wisdom about film and TV?
Sure. The best place to find me is on Twitter @KM_McFarland, McFarland.